and welcome to the New Book of Daniel podcast. My name is Daniel Bobinski, and I will be your host on this adventure. Today we have a special focus on the impeachment. Yes, I know you've heard all about it, but this podcast is about my F files, about faith, family and friends, finances, fitness, fortress, foundations, and fun. Those are the different F topics we might end up talking about on this podcast. And today we're going to be talking about foundations, which happens to be the usual topic, the usual file I'm pulling up for this so far. But, we're going to talk about all of them as we go. Today, I want to talk about the impeachment article that I wrote back in December at uncoverdc.com called Impeachment Motivations Part 2, Hiding Links to Corruption. This was something I wrote in the first week of December. I'm going to go over this article with you because I think now that the impeachment hoopla is over, we want to kind of look back and say, okay, what really happened? What really went on there? And I think reviewing this column is going to cause us to think, what directions should we go now? Before I jump in with this, I'm going to tell you that our show is sponsored by myworkplaceexcellence.com. Company's workplace excellence website, myworkplaceexcellence.com, happens to be my company. I've been doing one-on-one coaching, management leadership coaching for 30 years, team training, all sorts of things. We use assessment tools, DISC assessments, behavioral assessments, cognitive styles, motivational assessments. I've got a deal going on right now on the website. You get a DISC assessment and 2 coaching sessions with me for only $195. A DISC assessment and 2 coaching sessions with me, $195. You cannot beat this deal. I've been coaching, like I said, one-on-one, executives, managers, moms, it doesn't matter. But just as a way of experience, when one of my coaching clients went on to become the CEO of Motorola, I've been doing coaching in Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 500 companies, small mom and pops, everything in between. Doesn't matter the industry. What we teach people is self-awareness, self-management, work management, and relationship management. And the best way to start is to understand yourself. So self-awareness, and we do that with a DISC assessment first step, behavioral styles. How do you respond to problems? How do you deal with them? What's the pros and cons of that style? How do you like to influence others? What's the pros and cons of that style? How do you like the pace of your day to go? And the pros and cons. And then how do you follow rules and procedures? And what's the pros and cons of your preferences there? I help you understand that with this assessment. $195, you get to the assessment and 2 coaching sessions with me. If you don't want to spend $195, you can go to the show notes, and I just opened a Patreon account by popular demand. So if you just want to donate a couple of bucks a month to help support the podcast, you can do that in the show notes, Patreon account. Thank you so much for every bit of support you can provide. I have decided that I want to try to keep the show, at least for now, at about a half an hour. And if I do the 5 and 15 with the main topic, it ends up going a little bit long because I can't seem to restrain myself to just 15 minutes, unless I have Tracy Beans on the show, because, boy, we're going to stay on schedule with her. But talking about the different things that I want to talk about, I like to elaborate on them. It takes a little longer. So what I'm going to do is kind of do a 5 and 15 in a different show. It's probably end up getting renamed to 5 and 30 or something like that. But today I just want to talk about this impeachment article. And then we'll do 5 and 15 in a couple of days. So Impeachment Motivations Part 2, Hiding Links to Corruption, uncoverdc.com. If you go there and do a search for that title, Impeachment Motivations Part 2, it'll take you to this column. And you'll be able to click on the links that I'm going to talk about. Very important. I'm not just saying these things because I, quote unquote, believe them or heard them from somebody. I link always in my columns to reputable news sources. I don't just find some little conspiracy theorist, quote unquote, and I don't like that term, but some guy who's come up with some wild theory and he's at podunk.com. No, I always link to a reputable news source. Kind of the theme for this column is that the entire impeachment was scripted. It was a production. It was a play. And it reminded me of Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 2, the 2019 version. with the line, "The Democrats doth protest too much, methinks." It's really kind of the theme of that impeachment that we just sat through. Because Nancy Pelosi had this, no, we're not going to impeach until we have a bipartisan effort and compelling evidence. And then a couple of things happened, and Nancy went off the rails real fast and called for impeachment hearings without even having read the paperwork to do so. I think that there was a solution in looking for a problem. And they had the impeachment as their solution, and they were looking for a cause to enact this. As I go through this, we'll explain a little bit more. But this was a totally well-planned, well-rehearsed. We had all of the squad, you know, AOC and her friends, mouthing off, we're going to impeach this guy, impeach, 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 and Maxine Waters, we're going to impeach. And then when they finally move on it, Maxine and everybody shut up. And we had Mr. Schiff and Ms. Pelosi standing in front of American flags, all solemn, and going on news shows, all solemn, saying, nobody comes to Congress to impeach the President of the United States. We don't want to do this. But when the situation calls for it, we feel we must follow through with our constitutional duties. Oh my gosh. It's like, and she starts quoting the Constitution. And to which I say, you know, Satan quotes the Bible. That doesn't make him a follower of Christ. Nancy, this was all planned. You had this planned out. And I know, Nancy, that you are the marionette puppeteer. When my friend was chief of staff for a Democratic representative, Democratic congressman, he told me that when your office called his office, they put everything on hold, and it was Pelosi's on the phone. If she wants us to jump, how far does she want us to jump and how high? We dropped everything to do whatever Nancy said. That's when you were Speaker of the House before, and now you're Speaker of the House again. And I have no doubt that your methods haven't changed. So this was all planned by you. You sat down, I am convinced, with your people, and you had this planned out. Yes, that is my accusation. I have no proof of that, but I will bet dollars to donuts that's what happened. So we have Adam Schiff now, right? I'm going to go through a timeline here. Adam Schiff gave us this totally fabricated transcript, wildly fabricated, after they've said, wait a minute, that's not what he said. And then Adam goes, oh, well, that was a parody. It was just a joke. You know, it's like punching somebody in the face. Sorry, it was just a joke. And then he says, it's amazing, because he was on TV, and I linked to this, where the media is calling him out on this. Isn't this kind of crazy to go toward impeachment without having looked at all the documents? And Schiff, did I say Pelosi? I meant Schiff. Schiff really says, quote, there's no reason to wait. This doesn't depend on what the transcript says. What the president has already admitted was all we needed to know. He then spewed on that show lie after lie after lie, very straight-faced, very calm, all pre-planned. They oh, we're going to approach this very solemnly. I linked to this. You can go watch it yourself. And I sat there and watched it and I go, can this guy have any less intellectual honesty? And then I thought, no, don't ask that, because he'll take it as a challenge. But it was all this illusion of patriotism with the backdrop of American flags, kind of like a badly scripted elementary school play. What I wanted to know was, what are they trying to hide? It was just too crazy. Pelosi didn't even call for a vote in the House. She just unilaterally decided we are going to move forward with impeachment when she didn't even read the documents. And I linked to an article that shows that she didn't even read the documents. So in part one, which also is linked on uncoverdc.com, I do a pretty deep dive into some relationships that Adam Schiff had with Igor Pasternak from his Aeroflot, this Ukrainian blimp company. It's now an American blimp company. And all of the little kickbacks that Mr. Adam might have been getting. This is taking a little bit more of a timeline approach, this particular version. And I'm just presenting facts and I'm asking questions here, right? Because it's like a friend of mine said, you know, how easy would it be for congressional representatives and vice presidents to kind of send all this military aid over to these foreign countries and then send their friends over to get kickback money or to get hired on by different companies or get military contracts or whatever, and then all of that money comes back. And you know what we need to be concerned about this is because it's our money. These are not our leaders. The people who are sitting in Washington, D.C. are not our leaders. The Congress consists of our representatives. They're not our leaders. And the money that they spend is ours. And I think we tend to forget that in our society. Our schools certainly don't reinforce this. They did a little bit when I was going through school. That was many decades ago. Today, it's all about government money, and the government needs to provide this, and the government needs to provide that. And they never talk about who the government gets their money from. It's us, the taxpayer. So when we talk about corruption and graft and all these dollars flowing overseas and coming back to people's pockets, that's our tax dollars, okay? So, and that's a big thing with me. I really think that we should be more concerned about that. Anyways, let's start at the beginning with Zelensky getting elected. He's the new president of Ukraine, right? We have a situation of an actor in America who runs for president. He's never held political office before, and he gets elected. He runs on a platform of anti-corruption. We're going to drain the swamp. Same thing happened in Ukraine. President Zelensky was a TV actor. He owned his own production company, and he ran for president with zero political experience, and he got elected with 73% of the vote. 73%. So he assumes office on the 20th, again, running on a platform of rooting out corruption. On May 7th, President Trump recalls Ambassador Marie Yovanovich. There's all sorts of rumor floating around now that we see Rudy Giuliani saying that she was withholding evidence, that they were trying to get Ukrainian officials to come to the United States to testify, and she was slowing down or even refusing to give them passports to come over here. She didn't, I have not found an article on this one, but I heard that she didn't even want to hang President Trump's picture in the embassy there in Ukraine, that she was a big Obama guy. There is, I'm going to refer you to Rudy Giuliani's podcast. He has a lot more information on Marie Yovanovich. But let's just say it doesn't smell good for her. People wanting to testify about Hunter Biden's activities were not allowed to come here. Now, most ambassadors are career diplomats, but they always serve at the pleasure of the president. So what's really strange is after Trump recalls Yovanovich, Representatives Steny Hoyer from Maryland and Eliot Engels from New York both had this article that came out. They called it a political hit job. My question, why would it be a political hit job if nothing about politics was involved with it? And we know that the ambassadors serve at the pleasure of the president. So, and that's constitutional law. So I don't understand what their problem is calling it a political hit job. My first thought, the Democrats doth protest too much, methinks. You have an ambassador who's not holding up visas. I mean, she's not cooperating, she's holding up visas. And so she gets recalled. All right. So on July 25th, President Trump calls President Zelensky to congratulate him, right? This is the famous phone call. And the firestorm about the leak, about what happened on the phone call. And notice that all the media focuses on what Trump said about the Bidens. If you're a magician, you have this technique called misdirection, because magicians technically are illusionists, right? They have this illusion of something going on. And so a misdirection is to bring your eye over here to do something, so they're watching something over here while your hand over here is doing something different. So they want you to look away from what's really going on. It's called misdirection. I think that's what's happening here. The big leak about what Trump said is a misdirection from what else is in the transcript. And that's what Zelensky had to say. If you look at page 4 of the transcript, and Zelensky's talking about the transition, and Trump says, yes, by the way, the former ambassador of the United States, the woman was bad news, and the people that she was dealing with in the Ukraine were bad news. So I just wanted to let you know that. I own a business. when, if I were to have an employee who was working behind my back and doing something that I would not approve of, and a fellow business person told me, hey, I've got a bad employee, and that bad employee has been working with your employees to do something behind your back, I would very much appreciate it if that other business owner would tell me that. That would be ethical, looking out for each other kind of stuff that I would expect. I mean, if I had the opposite, if I had a bad employee who I knew was dealing with some people in another business owner's business, I'd want to tell him, hey, I got a bad employee here. He's dealing with these people in your company. You might want to know about this. Maybe they're embezzling or doing something illegal or unethical or immoral. You should know about it. I'm going to tell him that. That's what was said here. The former ambassador, it was bad news, and the people she was dealing with at your end were bad news too. I just wanted to let you know that. So here's Zelensky's response. Keep in mind, English is not his first language. This is a translation. He says, as far as I can recall, her name was Yovanovich. It was great that you were the first one who told me that she was a bad ambassador, because I agree with you 100%. Her attitude toward me was far from the best, as she admired the previous president and she was on his side. She would not accept me as a new president very well enough. Let me translate that. Dear President Trump, thanks for being the one who said she was bad. I knew that. I probably wouldn't have brought it up with you, but I totally agree with you. You think about Zelensky's position. He's the subordinate company, the subordinate country. And here's the president of the United States saying, hey, this woman was bad. And he's going, oh, thanks. I'm glad you brought it up because, yeah, she was bad. And I wouldn't have said it. I wouldn't have brought it up myself because you wouldn't want to insult the president of the United States. Think about this from a conversational point of view. What's the mindset? What's the motivators? Something else. He said she was bad. Why was Yovanovich on the side of the previous Ukrainian president, Poroshenko? In July, after this phone call, Poroshenko is charged with 11 counts of criminal corruption. Here's a question. I have no correlation, but you tell me. Someone out there's got to know. What was Marie Yovanovich doing with President Poroshenko that she doesn't want known that might have been associated with 11 counts of criminal corruption, including high treason? I think it ought to be looked into. And something else. In the transcript, the name is spelled Yovanovich with an I, not Yovanovich with a Y-O. You got to know that the people who translated this knew who she was. They had to have known it was Marie Yovanovich. There is no record of any Marie Ivanovich or Ivanovich. But think about what he said. He's got a heavy Ukrainian accent. He probably has a little, that Russian type. Her name is Ivanovich, which would be how you would pronounce Y-O-V-A-N, Yovanovich. You go Yovanovich. And so somebody purposefully mistyped it to Ivanovich. Here's my theory. I have no proof. This is a theory. When people search for records, they type in somebody's name. And if Yovanovich doesn't show up in the telephone transcript, then that telephone transcript doesn't come up in the search. So her name is misspelled, I think, on purpose. If you happen to know anybody who had anything to do with translating that transcript, please put them in touch with me. I just have some questions I want to ask about that. So let's move into August of last year, August 6th. The Office of Management and Budget, part of the executive office, right? This is the office that reports to the president, directly to the president, not Congress. Office of Management and Budget is an executive office. They sent a letter to the U.S. Department of State, an agency, and the U.S. Agency for International Development. And in the letter, they tell this Department of State, says, look, these funds that we're giving you, and I quote here, shall be unavailable for obligation. In other words, you're not going to be able to use them until 3 business days after the Office of Management and Budget, us, receives an accounting from your agencies of the current outstanding unobligated resources. Translated, you aren't getting any more money until you can tell us what you're doing with what we already gave you or what you're going to do with it. You got to tell us what you're going to do with it. This is Trump's OMB telling this Department of State, tell us what you're doing with the money. And so they give a list of what they want accounting for. And among the programs listed is the Foreign Military Financing Program, which according to their website, which I linked to, has to do with procurement of defense articles and services for foreign countries and international organizations, which includes money sent to Ukraine. So again, in plain English, tell us what Ukraine's been doing with our tax dollars. That's what the White House wants to know. Keep in mind now, President Zelensky ran on a campaign of rooting out corruption, and he didn't let any grass grow under his feet because he said in that phone call, we had the transcript, that he was going to have a Prosecutor General taking office in September. That was in the transcript. Well, come November, September, October, November, so it takes 2 months after the guy takes office for the Ukrainian news agency, Interfax Ukraine, to come out with a press release that says that the new president's party is shining a light on at least one beefy incidence of corruption. And in this press release, they point out that $7.4 billion went to the previous president, not Poroshenko, but I always have a difficult time saying this guy's name, Yanukovych, thank you. His family illegally obtained $7.4 billion and laundered the funds through an investment fund close to some representatives of the U.S. Democratic Party in the form of external government bonds. This is a press release from the Ukraine news agency. Okay. The Democratic Party, run by Nancy Pelosi, it should be noted that this comes from the Ukrainian thing, and it should be noted that the Yanukovych, then president, was removed from office by a 328-0 vote in what was known as the Ukrainian Revolution. In the press release, Ukrainian Minister Dubinsky, no relation to Bobinsky, said that the presidents of Ukraine and the United States should combine the efforts of the two countries to establish facts of corruption and money laundering with the participation of citizens of both countries. And I continue. President Zelensky must pick up the phone, dial Trump, ask for help and cooperation in the fight against corruption, and fly to Washington. The issue of combating international corruption in Ukraine with the participation of citizens, businessmen, and U.S. officials should become a key during the meeting of the two presidents, said the minister. Question. Both these guys won elections. Zelensky and Trump both won election on promises to drain the swamp. We've got the White House saying, tell us what you're doing with the money. We got Ukraine saying, hey, we uncovered $7.2 billion in money laundering going on with definite ties to the Democrats. Do you think just maybe, that Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff didn't want something seen? Maybe, just maybe, all of this impeachment stuff is nothing but a misdirection, nothing but a cover-up by the House Democrats to try to keep their crimes, their corruption from being found out. Just maybe. I would love to see the Democrats be investigated in this. I think the Republicans need to act a little more. In fact, I just released a column today on Uncover DC called Open Letter to Republicans. You can't let up. You can't. You've got to keep going. You've got to push forward. Don't just stop and go, okay, the impeachment's over, and then go on with business. You've got to press forward to enact the Republican agenda and stop the cover-ups. Investigate these people. I want to go back to this Ukraine press release. This one is another comment in this press release from a Ukrainian MP, Durlak, and I'm quoting, because we're talking about the Franklin Templeton Investments. In addition to Franklin Templeton Investments, a company called BlackRock Investment Institute has also been identified with the Yanukovych money laundering operation. The son of the Templeton's founder, John Templeton Jr., was one of President Obama's major donors. Another fund-related character is Thomas Donilon, managing director of BlackRock Investment Institute, shareholder Franklin Templeton Investments, which has the largest share in the fund. It is noteworthy that he was previously Obama's national security advisor. Let that sink in for a second. And then think about this. Adam Schiff's financial disclosure report lists BlackRock, lists Franklin Templeton Investments, people donating money to Adam Schiff. Coincidence? Perhaps, perhaps not. I think this is something that should be investigated, don't you? I mean, we have a paper trail, a definitive paper trail. How come we don't have any crimes? The Democrats scream impeachment. They make up a bunch of stories. The Democrats doth protest too much, methinks, in this little hamlet of a play designed by Pelosi and her team. Very bad play. Let's take a look at Pelosi, by the way, because I'm talking mostly about Adam Schiff. Pelosi has this guy named Paul, her son. He gets on this board of directors for this company called Viscoil E&O Inc., which is no longer in business. But there are videos online of him in Ukraine talking about how his company is investing in Ukraine, and even Nancy Pelosi bragging there about her son's involvement. And we have to know that Pelosi flew her entire family to Ukraine in 2017, and her son's doing a lot of business in Ukraine. I think that what happened is it's kind of like the perfect storm. You had anti-corruption Trump talking on the phone to anti-corruption Zelensky. You have the Office of Management and Budget saying, hey, tell us where you're spending the money in Ukraine. You've got Ukraine saying, hey, we found $7.2 billion in money laundering. I would say that's some evidence that needs to be looked at and find out where the connections happen. But I think something else that Pelosi is covering up. I think there's more than just corruption in Ukraine. I think Pelosi's hiding other corruption in her background. I did some digging back to 2010 when Pelosi was introducing a bunch of business people to a bunch of Congress people, and she announces that one of the men in this business group is her son's boss and happens to be a business partner with her husband in more than half a dozen investments. And this is, I linked to the article in Roll Call, where it says that one of these business deals netted the Pelosi's $100,000 in 2009. Isn't that like taking advantage of your relationship? I think that needs to be looked into. Shouldn't the House Ethics Committee be looking into this? I think it's a shortfall, a shortcoming of our House Ethics Committee that they don't have enough teeth. They don't do enough to track the malfeasance on any side of the aisle, Republican or Democrat. When you got foxes guarding the hen house, or foxes guarding the fox house, or hens guarding whatever analogy you'd like to ascribe to that, they're not going to incriminate them. It's very difficult to get. You have to have a buttload of evidence to get them incriminated. Let's go to Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters had very flagrant paper trail of corruption, where her husband and her benefited greatly financially on some bank situations, and there was a very verifiable paper trail. 10 days before she was supposed to be voted on for censure, the House Ethics Committee dropped it altogether, and the only reason they gave was revelation of new evidence. No, they didn't tell us what the evidence was. They just said revelation of new evidence, and they dropped the case. Okay, hypothetically play this out. Maybe Maxine Waters and friends find some dirt on people on the ethics committee, and they go to ethics committee and says, hey, we've got this dirt on you. If you convict me, we're going to out you too. Oh, new evidence. I guess we can't. We're going to drop this whole charge against Maxine Waters. It's a huge problem in our Congress that they are policing themselves. When they wrote the Constitution, their assumption was that after 2 years, people would get voted out. They did not foresee people being in there as career politicians. It just wasn't in their DNA back then. But look what we got. Look what we got. How about 2014, when Investment Watch, and I linked to the article, Investment Watch tells us that Pelosi's husband bought just under $250,000 in stocks in a green energy company that wasn't doing so well. And a few weeks later, the company announces a merger and the stocks soar 29%. You tell me. And that just happens to be at the exact same time that Obama is pushing a lot of green energy initiatives. How do you think Pelosi might have found out about those mergers? And yet the ethics committee didn't even look into that. I think maybe Nancy doesn't want that looked into. I think that if it got looked into, Nancy might get in trouble. But if it's the House Ethics Committee guarding the House members, it might not result in any effect to Nancy. We got a deep state. We got a Washington swamp. They've been doing misdirection for a long time. And I think it's time for the Republicans to press forward into the Republican platform. The reason that a lot of people left the Republican Party and moved to the Tea Party or became an independent like myself, and then, like I said, if you've watched episode number 1 on the podcast, I refer to myself as a Christian libertarian. A lot of us became very disgruntled with the Republican Party because of McCain, because of Romney. These guys were Republicans with a name only. They were not Republicans. George W. Bush and with a Republican president, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, they still did nothing. They didn't press forward on the Republican agenda. After 40 years of not having all three, they finally got all three. And I was like, yes, they're now going to do everything they said they were going to do. And then 10 seconds later, I thought, what if they don't? What if they don't? And they didn't. And so many of us became disillusioned and disgusted that we left the party. Only coming back into the fold when someone's going, yes, we can go back to American foundational principles. Donald Trump waved that flag, and we got behind him. There needs to be a press forward, Republicans. In 2025, when Donald Trump is no longer in office, are we going to see the same level of and the same intensity of Republican leadership? Or are you going to just go back to the same old ways and have your entire base just walk away again? It's up to you guys. It's up to you. If you let the Democrats move forward, we will not have a country. They have just submitted a bill that the New Way Forward Act. And I will link to this in the show notes. You need to go look at this act. If this act gets passed, America will cease to be America as you know it. Guaranteed. It's all in there. All the foundational things that we hold dear right now about our laws and how our laws operate and how what we have to do as a country to maintain our borders and our sense of security will be gone. This is being pushed by the squad. These people who are, and as I've already said, they are not patriots. And yes, I said that. They are not patriots. They don't want American values. So Republicans, stand up. This is my newest column, by the way. This column I just talked about in this podcast. I wrote back in the first week of December of 2019. I'm referencing now in this past few minutes an article I just wrote today about Republicans needing to not hold back. You got to keep forward. An open letter to Republicans. Go to uncoverdc.com and find that. Let your congressman see that letter. Send it to them. It's an open letter. Put your own name on it if you agree with it. Push it on to them. Let them see that they can't let up if we want to keep this country the way it is. The next time there's a Democrat in the White House, the next time there's a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate, this country's gone. You will not recognize it. And there's zero hyperbole in that. Zero. All you got to do is read the bill, the New Way Forward Act, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. So before you castigate me for saying that or saying I'm just bloviating or conspiracy theory, first I want you to read the New Way Forward Act and find out what it's about. If you're not agreeing with me on any of this stuff, if you're trying to poke holes in what I'm saying, go read that act before you respond. If you respond without reading the act, then your comment means nothing to me. Speaking of which, if you have comments on what I've talked about today or something that you'd like to hear about in the show, if you're watching this on YouTube, down below is the comment section. Leave me a comment. If you want to send me an email, newbookofdaniel@outlook.com. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, it's @newbookofdaniel. You want to follow my blog? It is www.newbookofdaniel.com. You got to use the W's on that one. www.newbookofdaniel.com. And of course, if you want to read my columns on Uncover DC, just go to uncoverdc.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll find a magnifying glass. Type in the name Bobinski, Bobinski, and that up will come all of the columns that I have published on Uncover DC. Support the podcasts with a Patreon donation each month, or you can go to myworkplaceexcellence.com and take a look at that disc assessment and the 2 coaching sessions. I really thank you for staying with me and digging into this impeachment stuff. Please press your Republican representatives to move, not to sit back and enjoy the show, but to press forward and keep fighting for us. My name is Daniel Bobinski. This is the New Book of Daniel podcast. Have yourself a great day.